Witness the events that have shaped our lives. Witness the history. Witness our century.
World War II, history's greatest conflict, seen through the eyes of the soldiers who fought the battles. Hear their dramatic stories and witness the epic clash between Axis and Allies, victory and defeat from both sides of the battle line.
The western desert of North Africa comprises 2 million square miles of empty hell. In this featureless landscape of blowing sand and drifting mirages, of 120-degree temperatures and no water, two armies have assembled. Their job? To annihilate each other. The victorious Panzer Army, standing within the borders of Egypt, consists of 4 German and 8 Italian divisions, totaling 96,000 men. One member of this proud army, a veteran of 13 months in the desert and a platoon leader in the 21st Panzer Division, is Sergeant Helmut Strelo.
Soon we will be in Cairo. We hear that the British are already evacuating. After so many months in the desert, it will be good to be in a city again.
These tough, self-reliant, and aggressive soldiers are brilliantly led by General Erwin Rommel. Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, is already a legend. His men idolize him. His enemies respect him. Even Churchill doesn't hesitate to call him a great general. The British strength is growing out of all proportion to that of the Germans. Rommel estimates that their strength will be superior to his by mid-September. Rommel must attack before the odds are against him. The British 8th Army, the opposing force in the desert, consists of 3 armored divisions and 7 infantry divisions and brigades. An army of 150,000 men. These Australians, New Zealanders, Indians, South Africans, Highlanders, Englishmen are under the command of the newly appointed General Bernard L. Montgomery. Since assuming command in August, Montgomery finds his army suffering from a Rommel complex. His men are so awed and mesmerized by this wizard of the desert that anything done well is called a Rommel. Monty sets out to shatter this legend and create his own. In the days to follow, Montgomery completely reorganizes the 8th Army and tells his men, "We stay here alive or we stay here dead." One Tommy, a veteran of the Tobruk fighting the previous fall, and now a mortarman with the 7th Armored Division, is Sergeant Lee Burns.
We wonder if this damn training and drilling will ever end. There are now plenty of materials and everything else to make the big move. We hope it comes soon. Waiting is hard to take. From now on, we are going to be doing the chasing. We are going to win, and that is all there is to it. It is an uplifting feeling to realize that we are starting in again. Hit Monty for my money any day.
Throughout August, Allied convoys arrived from England and the United States. The ratio of ground strength is now 3-to-1 in favor of the British. The RAF already holds unchallenged command of the air. The British military leaders know Rommel must attack soon or forever lose any chance. Anticipating the attack, strong countermeasures are prepared. The British hoped to draw Rommel into a calculated ambush. Rommel's main concern is his supply problem. Everything from tanks to bullets to fuel must make the dangerous Mediterranean voyage and then be trucked another 500 miles across the Libyan desert to the front. Some supplies are flown directly from Italy. The Royal Navy and the RAF make certain that the quantities are never adequate. By the end of August, the German supply situation is critical. For Rommel, it is now or never. He must take the offensive without further delay. Although suffering with a chronic liver condition, Rommel plans the attack. The element of surprise is all important. The plan is characteristic of Rommel. A fast diversionary move north along the edge of the coast, and a heavy attack 40 miles to the south. Then encirclement of the 8th Army striking from the rear. Next, smash through to the east across the desert to Cairo and the Suez Canal, the jugular vein of the British Empire. Rommel has promised sufficient supplies of fuel will arrive before the attack. You can start your battle, General. The fuel is on its way, he is told by the High Command. A little after midnight on August 30th, the attack begins. Soon the attack is slowed by encountering hidden British minefields. The surprise is lost. Rommel is now forced to attack the well-dug-in British positions. Before the day is finished, 3 of the 4 German generals leading the attack are killed on the battlefield. By the 3rd day, the RAF adds the finishing touches to the collapsing German offensive. With the attack lost, Rommel orders a withdrawal to the original positions. Rommel has lost more than a battle. He has lost the initiative. After the clash at Alem el-Halfa, the British 8th Army begins to prepare for its own offensive. The attack is set for October 23rd to coincide with the planned Allied invasion of North Africa. Operation Torch, scheduled 2 weeks later. Montgomery goes to unusual lengths to confuse and deceive German intelligence as to the place and time of his attack. Mock-up tanks and phony supplies begin to appear in the South. It is an expert production of military stagecraft. A dummy pipeline is started. The Germans soberly estimate that it cannot be completed before November. In the face of the anticipated British attack, Rommel takes elaborate defensive measures. He constructs intricate barbed wire entanglements and a series of minefields called Devil's Gardens, acre after acre of carefully planted high explosives.
Our minefields contain the greatest concentration of mines ever laid, nearly 500,000 of them. These gardens, as Rommel calls them, run along the entire front, in some places as much as 5 miles deep.
With a British attack not expected before November, Rommel flies home to Germany for urgent medical treatment. The 8th Army intends to destroy Rommel's forces in their defensive positions. The method is unorthodox. Infantry will move in first, followed by the tanks. By the end of October, the preparations are complete. Montgomery tells his troops, "When I assumed command of the 8th Army, I said that the mandate was to destroy Rommel and his army, and that it would be done as soon as we were ready. We are ready now." On October 23rd, 1942, 1,000 British guns opened fire. Wipes out the front-line German communications network and plows up Rommel's minefields. The infantry manages to penetrate the main German defense line along a front 6 miles wide. In the heat of the first day's battle, Rommel's replacement, General Stumme, dies of a heart attack. Rommel, upon hearing of the unexpected violent British attack, leaves his sickbed and returns to Egypt. On the 25th, all British armor is in the open. An important landmark, Kidney Ridge, is taken by the British.
Rommel has come back. He has been in a hospital in Austria, but when he heard that the Afrika Corps was in trouble, he demanded a plane and flew here. Thank God for Rommel.
Rommel launches an attack to regain Kidney Ridge. The counterattack fails. Rommel observes, rivers of blood are poured out over miserable strips of land. To add to the problem, the German tanker Proserpina is sunk outside Tobruk. Rommel sends an urgent message to Hitler. The battle will be lost if something is not done immediately to improve the supply situation. In a now or never gesture, Rommel assembles all his motorized units. He resolves to make one more stand, switches his German troops north to the edge of the Mediterranean, leaving the Italians to man the positions along the southern front. The battle is 1 week old. The front is strangely quiet. Monty is assembling a new striking force for the big push, called Operation Supercharge. With the Germans busy up in the north, the whole will be punched through the weaker Italian positions in the south. Montgomery informs General Alexander, his commander-in-chief, "So far, Rommel has had to dance to my tune. I think he is now ripe for a real hard blow."
We are ordered to charge. At this moment, we stop thinking. We fix our bayonets and keep on running.
This is the largest armored engagement of the African campaigns.
Remember, you have a rifle in your hand. You ask yourself, what are you going to do with it? You find that your training period has paid off, for your actions and reactions come almost automatically.
Rommel now has only 35 tanks left. His supplies depleted, his men exhausted, he cannot withstand another attack. Rommel gives his foot divisions a head start to save most of them, and sends a message to Hitler's headquarters requesting immediate withdrawal. A message is received from Hitler. You can show your troops no other way than that which leads to victory or death. Hitler's permission or not, Rommel gives orders to withdraw. The Great Retreat is on.
We are burning our equipment. We are keeping only our field kitchens and our hospital cars. All that I have left is a walking stick and a rifle. We are moving back, and we know that it is all over.
The Desert Fox is on the run. The Battle of El Alamein is over. After the Battle of El Alamein, Sergeant Strelo will fight on with the Africa Corps and will be captured in Tunisia by the British in May 1943. Sergeant Burns will continue to fight in the Algerian campaign. Later, with the 7th Armored Division, he will participate in the Normandy landings. With the decisive British victory at El Alamein, Rommel's Africa Corps is mortally wounded, and the grandiose German dream of conquest in the Middle East is forever shattered.
Witness the events that have shaped our lives. Witness the history. Witness our century.
World War II, history's greatest conflict, seen through the eyes of the soldiers who fought the battles. Hear their dramatic stories and witness the epic clash between Axis and Allies, victory and defeat from both sides of the battle line.
In the winter of 1940, a British storm breaks over Italian North Africa. For the first time in World War II, Allied troops take the initiative, smashing against the Italian front in northern Libya. The British advance is so swift that one Australian division alone captures over half the Italian-Libyan army. The whole Italian position in Africa is near a state of collapse. Before Mussolini can send out an SOS to his fellow dictator, the German High Command has analyzed the situation. Hitler creates the German Africa Corps, an elite arm of mechanized infantry, artillery, and armor. To lead this special unit, Hitler appoints a brilliant panzer commander, Erwin Rommel. Neither he nor his troops have experience in desert warfare. As soon as panzer troops come ashore, Rommel sends formations straight to the front to probe British forward lines. The Africa Corps must learn as they go. In one of the artillery batteries is a veteran of earlier German victories in Europe, Private Karl Bolst.
There are many Italian troops here who have been fighting over a year now. We have been told they are poorly led, that it is up to us to get them out of the trouble they are in. We are confident we will be able to show them how to be victorious.
April 3rd, driving over 500 miles, Rommel advances into Benghazi with a lightning thrust. He startles not only Rome and Berlin, but also the British. Within 10 days, the Germans have made a knifing advance across northern Libya, from the outskirts of Tripoli to the borders of Egypt. They can go no further without a supply line from the sea. Tobruk is that supply line, the only deep harbor between Benghazi and Alexandria. With the Allied troops falling back on Tobruk is an Australian infantry sergeant, Geoffrey Fernside.
It's been 6 days of touch and go, constantly strafed by aircraft, keeping one jump ahead of the German tanks ranging our flanks, in an effort to cut off our retreat back to the fixed defenses at Tobruk. We had one humorous incident before reaching Tobruk. In a dust storm, the lead truck went off on a tangent and commenced to circle around in the desert. When the mistake became apparent, One of our diggers yelled, "A fine howdy you bloody will do. Playing Ring of Rosies in the desert with Jerry on our tail." As we go through the perimeter of defenses, I feel strangely troubled. The Germans, no doubt, will surround the fortress and attack till it falls.
Good Friday, April 11th. Tobruk is isolated. Desert rats wait silently, dug in their holes in underground bunkers, allowing German tanks to come on through the outer perimeter. German infantry follows, thinking their tanks have cleared the way. This is just what the British want.
German tanks manage to pass through the outer defenses and go looking for our gun line. They get a rude shock when our men jump up from their slit trenches and get stuck into them. Of a shell, 26 men are hit in our leading platoon, removed from the order of battle, maybe from life itself. We march past our comrades, trying not to hear the sounds that are tearing our hearts wide open.
The German blitzkrieg is checked. Axis infantry breaks up in complete disorder. Rommel decides to wait for the arrival of the 15th Panzer Division while the German Luftwaffe harasses the British at Tobruk. May 25th, there is a lull in the fighting. Both sides take a break from battle and reorganize. Despite heavy losses, the Royal Navy still manages to deliver 84 tons of supplies a day and 16,000 troops.
We have just heard that Crete has fallen to the first paratroop invasion the world has ever seen. And we begin to have some second thoughts about the impregnability of our Tobruk fortress. We begin to fear that the Germans might attempt a parachute assault on us in such numbers that coinciding with a land attack, it might prove too much for us. Water is always a problem. We're rationed to about 2 cups a day. Out of this, we're supposed to wash, shave, keep our underclothes clean, and make tea. We keep it mostly for tea.
June 15th. The British now have more tanks, more men, and more planes than the Germans. Wavell launches Operation Battle Axe to destroy Rommel's forces and gain a decisive victory in North Africa.
We have been retreating for 3 days now. Before starting out, General Rommel ordered us to attach heavy chains and cables behind our trucks to stir up clouds of dust as we move across the desert. In this way, the enemy will think our force is larger than it really is, and so not close in on us. So far, the trick is working, and when we reach a good defensive position, we will turn and hit back hard.
Rommel's crack Panzer Division show the results of his hard discipline. The British take a beating. 2/3 of their tanks are destroyed. Infantry casualties tremendous. The British are driven back to where they started. Operation Battle Axe is a total failure.
The enemy is not close to our lines. He has elected to stay beyond our small arms fire and act purely as a containing force. We could adopt a passive role and sweat it out, but our commander, Major General Moorehead, insists on a policy of aggressive patrolling. From 100 positions all around the wire, reconnaissance and fighting patrols go out to harass the enemy. The Germans and Italians don't patrol to the extent we do and tend to react nervously. They booby-trap their front quite heavily, and most of our patrol casualties are due to anti-personnel mines rather than to direct enemy action.
We take special precaution against the night patrols of the Australians. They paint their faces and wear rubber shoes, and then they try to slip through our lines. They also carry bush knives, and we joke about it, but most of the men still don't like to see the night come.
Churchill removes Wavell from command and sends General Claude Auchinleck to succeed him. The Rats of Tobruk and the Western Desert Force combine to form the British 8th Army. Infantry and armored brigades of Scots, English, Australians, Poles, Indians, South Africans, and New Zealanders prepare for the biggest British offensive yet, Operation Crusader. November 17th, 1942. The British 8th Army, poised on the Libyan border, is about to launch Operation Crusader, their biggest offensive yet against Rommel's Africa Corps. A special British commando party has just raided Rommel's headquarters, but the mission is a failure. Operation Crusader begins. The big squeeze is on. At the same time, the Tobruk garrison breaks out.
Somehow it all seems preordained. Australian infantry with British supporting arms has held Tobruk for all these dreary months. Isn't it only right and just that Australians should take part in lifting the siege? Lord Haw has called us the Rats of Tobruk. Well, the rats are coming out of the trap. Now General Rommel rallies his forces and counter-thrusts.
German tanks go on a wild rampage right through the British lines. They smash 8th Army headquarters and keep going. The Germans attempt to force the English back and take Tobruk. Rommel's daring nearly pays off, but he's stretched too thin. Auchinleck regroups his 8th Army. His orders, attack everything you see and keep on attacking.
No matter how long it might take, the feeling in the Afrika Corps is that we will win over the enemy. As Rommel said, if we want to go to the Suez Canal, we can. It is all hard to believe, but you want to believe.
By December 7th, a third of Rommel's command is destroyed. His tank strength down to only 30. With no prospect of reinforcements till early January, Rommel pulls back. For 3 more weeks, the Desert Fox falls back behind skillful rearguard action and escapes beyond Tobruk. Operation Crusader is over.
After nearly a whole year, those of us who are left are leaving Tobruk. The siege is over, and we're headed for Palestine and rest. We look back to the desert fortress for the last time. You can see nothing to indicate men fought and died there. The roadblocks, the tank traps, the perimeter wire, the graves, all have vanished behind the shimmering heat waves.
Today, for the first time, I heard some of my comrades begin to complain. The sooner we get out of here, they said, the better for us. Let the Italians keep Africa. And if they can't, then let the British have it. But then we reminded ourselves what Rommel told us, and the complaining stopped.
Rommel hurries to complete preparations for attack before the British do. Both sides know by now that the first blow is the one most likely to win the battle. On the evening of January 21st, 1942, armed with more than 100 new German tanks, Rommel makes that move. Again and again, Rommel blends defense with offense, drawing British tanks into baited traps. Whenever the British chase German armor, they suddenly come face to face with Rommel's batteries.
Most of the time, we know little or nothing of the battle plan. Our officers tell us as little as necessary, and then only in the last moment. There's a reason for this. In this type of mobile warfare, there's great danger of being taken prisoner. And the less you know, the less the enemy will know. Our guns were not originally designed for use against tanks, but we are using them just for that, with great success.
And now history begins to repeat itself. There is the same hopeless congestion of an army retreating in the same direction to the same place, Tobruk. June 20th, Rommel makes his final attack. Stuka dive bombers blast a wide gap in the minefields. Germans charge in from all directions. In 24 hours, Tobruk surrenders. Nearly 35,000 British are taken prisoners. The capture of Tobruk brings Rommel a promotion to Field Marshal and enough supplies to batter the British all the way back to El Alamein. Karl Bolst is evacuated from Libya to Greece, where he spends several months in convalescence. Later, he is promoted to corporal and fights in Italy before being captured by the Americans in 1944. Geoffrey Fernside returns again to action in North Africa, taking part in the Battle of El Alamein. Later in the war, he receives a field commission and fights the Japanese in New Guinea. Even though Tobruk proved invaluable to the Germans as a supply base, the British 8th Army still managed to stop them at El Alamein. Then, with superior numbers in arms and men, the British hounded Rommel's Africa Corps all the way back to Tunisia, where in 1943 it was crushed by the combined forces of the Americans, British, and French.
Witness the events that have shaped our lives. Witness the history. Witness our century.
World War II, history's greatest conflict, seen through the eyes of the soldiers who fought the battles. Hear their dramatic stories and witness the epic clash between Axis and Allies, victory and defeat from both sides of the battle line.
June 28, 1942. For a year, the German invader has been in Russia. But Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's war to exterminate what he calls the Slavic horde, has not gone according to plan. Both Moscow and Leningrad have withstood the German onslaught. Now, in the summer of 1942, Hitler takes personal command of the army, orders it to wheel south, drive for Stalingrad on the Volga. Assigned the capture of Stalingrad is the powerful German 6th Army, under General Friedrich von Paulus, its troops proud victors of the Blitzkrieg through Holland, Belgium, and France. One of the 6th Army soldiers is Corporal Johann Jakubiak.
I am an artillery observer attached to the 176th Infantry Divisions. We have been fighting in Ukraine and Russia for more than 1 year. Most of us did not expect the Russians to fight back so long. But now, with the roads and fields dry again, our army has opened a giant offensive against the enemy. This time we will finish them off.
If the advancing German army can capture Stalingrad, their prize will be an industrial city of 700,000 people, a city dominating the Volga River, the jugular vein in the throat of the Soviet Union. He who holds Stalingrad seals Russia off from the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. It's a big assignment, and it must be done before the snow falls. The significance of Stalingrad is appreciated by Stalin, too, and the crack 62nd Siberian Army under General Vasily Chuikov is ordered into battle. As Hitler's armies drive toward the Don River, their tactics are no secret to the Russians. A few days before the German offensive opened, the entire plan fell into Russian hands. Too late to make changes, the drive moves ahead as scheduled. And even though the Russians know the place, the time, and the objectives, the German army is too powerful to be stopped. At first, the campaign moves fast. The weather is warm and the German panzers move swiftly across the open Russian steppes. Rostov to the south falls on July 27th. The Sixth Army has reached the Don River, and this last natural obstacle barring the way to Stalingrad slows the blitzkrieg. Stalingrad and the Volga are only 40 miles away, but stubborn Russian opposition becomes more tenacious with each mile.
Mile after mile, just one cannon after another. Heavy guns and light guns. German guns, Romanian and Italian. Whenever we encounter enemy strong points, they are immediately destroyed with a thunder shower of fire.
August 21st, the 6th Army, now supported by a fresh Panzer Division, makes its big push to cross the Don. Early in the morning, more than 100 assault boats begin crossing the river. Within hours, 6 infantry regiments have established a beachhead on the east bank. In the less than 2-month-old campaign, the Russian army has lost 250,000 men. As the Germans push toward the Volga, the Reds brace themselves to lose even more.
Day and night, we keep pushing across the steppes. Fighting is very heavy. I direct our battery to give supporting fire to the infantry. The Russians bring more troops to drive us back towards the Don, but our guns and panzers are cutting them to pieces.
Into the 40-mile margin separating the Don from the Volga, the Russians have jammed every available fighting man. Stalingrad itself, with the Volga at its back, is turned into an armed camp. Everyone who can hold a shovel is told to dig. Trenches, foxholes, tank traps. Any thought of evacuation is canceled by Stalin's direct order. Soldiers will fight harder, he says, for a live city than for an empty one. One of the Russian soldiers ordered to the Stalingrad front is a twice-wounded veteran from a small town near Minsk, Corporal Ivan.
I just returned this week from the hospital to my company outside Pugachev. Now they order us to the Stalingrad sector. Everyone knows the situation there is critical, but the reports are confusing. All we can be sure of is that there is more war ahead for us. The Germans must be stopped or everything is lost.
August 26th. The Luftwaffe launches the most devastating bombing attack of the campaign against Stalingrad. While Stalingrad reels under the Luftwaffe, the German troops move steadily closer to the shattered city. By September, the city is cut off from 3 sides, but still the Russians hang on. The Stalingrad tractor plant continues to work, and during September alone, under constant bombardment, turns out 350 tanks and armored cars. More than half are destroyed in a desperate attempt to throw the Germans back. 2 months after the opening of the German offensive, the city limits are finally penetrated. During the first week of September, German troops break into the city in a dozen places. The rail line to Moscow is cut. Now Stalingrad's only supply route is from across the Volga, behind the city. By the middle of September, the Germans have taken the highest point in town. Ironically, it is a Russian cemetery known as the ΜΑΧΗ Kurgan. From this high point, artillery and Stukas can be zeroed in on the Russians. Two days after the Germans take the ΜΑΧΗ Kurgan on September 16th, the Red Army's 13th Guards Rifles charges the strong point. "7,000 Russian soldiers die in the battle for the high ground. But by the end of the day, the Germans have given it up. They are back down the hill." German soldiers begin calling the battle for Stalingrad a Rattenkrieg, a rat's war, as every pile of rubble becomes a point to take or defend. As the Rats' War continues in the streets, Hitler ignores reports that General Georgy Zhukov is massing an enormous force north of the city for a crushing counterattack. November 16th, the oldest and best of Russia's allies arrives on the scene. The first snow of winter covers the field.
This morning, we arrived at Leninsk. Stalingrad is directly across the river. From the shelling and bombs falling on Stalingrad, we are as nervous as those in the struggle. Thousands of soldiers are gathering here. Also, there's many wounded here, but only the severe cases are evacuated. The others will go back with us to Stalingrad. The Volga is a frozen bridge. Our company is crossing over to Stalingrad on foot. 25,000 other troops will be with us. My comrades and I have no specific orders, only speeches from our leaders. They tell us that as the Soviet soldiers, we must stop the fascist enemy, if necessary, with a wall of bodies as high as the Caucasus.
November 19th, the Russians are ready to strike. As the guns come up and tanks are made ready to roll, the attack order goes out. The invader must now fight for his life. November 19th, 1942. Russian artillery opens a gigantic enveloping maneuver. One army north of the Germans, one to the south. 500,000 Russian soldiers, 1,500 tanks sweep in to crush the overextended German lines in a bear hug. From east of the frozen Volga, the Russians begin to move tanks, trucks, supplies, and men. From across the steppes sweeps a band of 50,000 saber-swinging Cossacks. Under the onslaught, the German line begins to bend. Then, through an area held by 2 Romanian divisions, the Russians make a breach. Quickly widening it to 2 miles, the Red Army races through the gap. Almost overnight, the Germans find themselves being crowded into a pocket. 3 days after their big strike, Red Army troops swinging between the Volga and the Don link up with their comrades coming around the other side. At a point near the Don, 40 miles west of Stalingrad, the Russian pincers snap shut. Trapped inside, more than 225,000 men of the German 6th Army. From von Paulus, a message goes to Berlin. Army encircled. Whole of Stalingrad now in Russian hands. Strong enemy forces approaching from the southeast and in great strength from northwest. Ammunition situation acute. Situation could compel abandonment of Stalingrad. As the squeeze tightens, von Paulus requests permission to attempt a breakout. Food, fuel, ammunition, all are in short supply. Hitler considers a breakout, then with Goering's assurance that the army can be supplied by air, orders it to dig in. Stay and fight, he says. I am not leaving the Volga. He announces that henceforth the army will be known as Fortress Stalingrad. The Russians, more realistically, refer to it as an armed camp of prisoners. The German soldier immediately begins to feel a shortage of ammunition. Rounds are counted now and rationed. A thrift is imposed at a time when only extravagance can win the battle. December 2nd, the Russians launch another full-scale attack on a trapped army. The rocket-launching Katyusha pours fire into a steadily shrinking target.
For us, the situation is very critical. Reinforcements and supplies have been promised, but they do not arrive. We have ammunition only for small arms. Medical supplies are gone. Bandages are taken from the wounded who die, then sterilized in water melted from the snow.
So many Soviet soldiers have come to Stalingrad in the past 2 days that in our sector there are 2 and 3 men in every hole. Everyone talks about the great encirclement of the Germans by our army. In this trapped situation, they will fight very hard against us until we crush them. The enemy is in the ruins not more than 50 meters from us. My comrades say there is Italian troops with the Germans, that they tremble more from fear than the cold. We make some jokes about them. Then someone says, kill all the Germans first, then the Italians, and the Romanians, you can leave it to me. But I tell myself, I will shoot at whatever comes first.
From the south, a German panzer army battles its way toward Stalingrad to relieve the encircled 6th. After 4 weeks, with hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers between the 2 German forces, the rescue attempt dies, 32 miles from the trapped 6th Army. Urged to break through the Russian circle and fight his way toward the relief army, von Paulus refuses without Hitler's approval. Hitler says the 6th Army will stay where it is.
We have not eaten in 3 days. I am out looking for food when I find a frozen horse. An officer asked me, "Soldier, will you give me some of that meat?" I say, no, I'll risk my life for it. Go get your own. How low the morale and discipline of our army have sunk.
Goering's boastful promise to keep Stalingrad supplied by air is lost in blizzards of snow. 278 planes are lost in December alone. Some pilots refuse to land in the pocket. They throw supplies from the sky. Von Paulus radios Army headquarters, if the Fuhrer's order to deliver 300 tons daily is not carried out, we are headed for a catastrophe. The Army is starving and freezing. It has nothing to eat or shoot and can no longer move its vehicles. January 8th, a Russian truce team demands the German surrender. Hitler provides the Army's answer. Surrender is forbidden. The 6th Army will hold its positions until the last man and the last round of ammunition. On January 27th, Russian troops drive right through the center of the Stalingrad pocket, splitting it in 2. At 5-minute intervals, the Russian radio broadcasts, every 7 seconds, a German soldier dies in Stalingrad.
Our company is closing on the enemy. Bullets whistle from everywhere. I fall. Then quick I get up and run forward. I collapse. A bullet had smashed through my mouth. As I try to call for help, the snow under me turns black.
January 30th. Hitler promotes von Paulus to the rank of field marshal and with devastating logic remarks that in all German history no field marshal has ever been taken prisoner. This then is Hitler's solution to his fiasco at Stalingrad. One day after his promotion, Field Marshal von Paulus surrenders Fortress Stalingrad. And as all scattered pockets of German resistance surrender, the last German radio message to leave Stalingrad is sent from a weather station. Temperature minus 13 degrees centigrade. Over Stalingrad, fog and red haze. Meteorological station now closing down. Greetings to the homeland.
Half of our group is wiped out. The rest of us surrender. Then this Russian lieutenant says to me, Tovarish, Tovarish, the war is over for you. I reply, it is good there is no more. For me, there is no relief, no sadness. After all the hardships, I am empty of feelings. I look at the Russians surrounding us. When we are fighting them, we were not looking at them as anything human. They were just the enemy, but they have suffered more than us. Now that is over, I begin to see how terrible this whole war has been.
After Johann Jakubiak's capture at Stalingrad, he is sent to a prison camp at Tashkent in southeastern Russia. Of the 130,000 German soldiers who marched into captivity at Stalingrad, he is one of the 5,000 who will live to return to the West. Corporal Ivan, wounded at Stalingrad, fights in Poland after his recovery. Later fights in Germany, where he is again wounded at the Oder River. By Hitler's own blunder, the army he had once boasted could storm the heavens had gone to its death in the city of Stalin. For the German people, Stalingrad shattered all illusions of an invincible Wehrmacht. For the Allies, it marked the turning point of the war. The city has another name now, Volgograd, but the battle on the Volga will always be called Stalingrad.